Hey guys, and welcome to another video. So I am so excited for Survivor's launch because you guys are watching this on Monday or later. It's launching on Tuesday, August 5th. And so for today's video, I thought it would be nice if I went over like the inspiration behind this book and all the fun little behind the scenes details like that. For those of you who don't know, Survivor is book 6 in the Valiant series. It's epic fantasy, but if you haven't read the other Valiant books, that's fine. It can be read as a standalone. So if you haven't read my other books, which are behind me here, that's okay. You can jump right on in and understand it fine. So it is kind of a standalone. It's epic fantasy. It is Survivor, the TV show, meets the Hunger Games, but it's like if the Hunger Games kind of grew up. So it's a multi-POV book, so it's got a huge cast of characters, and it is true epic fantasy. I'm so excited for this book. So, I did write it a long time ago, at least a long time ago for me. So I started writing the Valiant series when I was a teenager, and, Survivor was one of the earlier books because I wrote them kind of randomly, and like, I guess I gotta go back. So back in the day, I started with Hunter, I believe, and I didn't know what the series was going to be, and I designed it in a way that like each of the books were kind of like a standalone story about a hero fighting the way that darkness is affecting that hero's particular world. And eventually I came up with the idea for Raiden, one of the main characters in this, to travel the galaxy. It's more of a fantasy style galaxy, finding the chosen and calling them to help stop corruption from affecting other worlds. And so you kind of, Raiden pops in here and there, and as he gets some of the chosen heroes, some of them pop in other books, like they come with him to help this chosen in that book. So it's a lot of their backstories kind of leading up to a fantasy version of Avengers, basically Avengers Endgame or Assemble, where they all come together for the last 4 books. It's similar to Kingdom of Ash in that aspect by Sarah J. Maas. So it's epic fantasy of standalone. It's an epic fantasy series of standalones kind of building up to the finale. So, but when I first wrote them, I didn't have the whole series together, and it was kind of random, and it allowed me the freedom to kind of write what I wanted to write. Like, for instance, if I was more inspired for dragon shapeshifters, I wrote Shifter. When I was inspired for something else, I wrote the other ones. And so Survivor was one of the earlier written books, even though it's book 6. I think like Rogue, book 5, the book right before this one, was actually written after it. So the order that I published them in is not necessarily the order that I wrote them in. So Survivor, I describe it like Hunger Games meets Survivor, the reality TV show. I'll pop up some pictures here so you guys know what I'm talking about if you don't. But that's not actually what the original inspiration for it was. I wrote this so long ago that the main inspiration for Survivor was actually the teenage version of Survivor. It was a show on Nickelodeon called Endurance. And in that one, again, it was a teenage version of Survivor, so it wasn't quite as cutthroat. They still had challenges, but in that one, they actually a set number of boys and a set number of girls would compete. They would become they had like a partner choosing challenge. I don't remember what it was called because this is like long time ago. So they ended up, instead of being in tribes like in Survivor, they were actually in pairs, one boy and one girl teaming up with each other. And then they would compete together, and like certain challenges, it would be won instead of winning immunity, like in Survivor, the team that wins would get a piece that they had, and they needed to collect as many as they could. And they would also get to choose to send 2 teams to the temple, and at the temple they would compete, and the loser would get eliminated. And so that's kind of how the competition went. And so I took all of my inspiration for the game itself was from Endurance. So that's why my characters and the players of this deadly game are in pairs. I really liked the team dynamics and the team alliances and the team betrayals. I liked the concept of teams that win certain challenges get to send 2 other teams to a place to challenge each other, and that potentially gets you eliminated, or in this case, like it can really hurt you, where it makes the challenges that are already deadly even more deadly. So it's like you really have a very slim chance of surviving at that point. So you really wanted to win, and also you really wanted to avoid getting sent there for the most part. And I liked that, and so it allowed a lot of dynamics in the game. in the story for the plot line. So I don't remember the actual inspiration behind the world building, but so the game inspiration was one part of it, and the other part of it was this world that my husband and I built. And actually a lot of the world building, the original core of the ideas, core is a nice little pun there, if you know, you know. I didn't mean to do that. The original ideas of the world of like that was actually my husband, and I kind of built upon that. So essentially in concept, the planet is called Haikum, and it's built around its core where the Nightclimbs live. So the Nightclimb are like the rich and elite, and they live in the core. They have technology. I really like the editing process with my editor, really helped me kind of lean into, okay, what kind of world do I want this to be? And we went with more of a sci-fi world in the core because they're advanced, they're rich. The Nightclimbs are the ones putting on the games. It's their source of entertainment. And so I didn't pull inspiration from the Hunger Games in that aspect. It was just coincidence that it was similar to the Hunger Games and how the Capitol puts them in the Hunger Games. It just worked that way. And so I had the idea, honestly, a lot of my inspiration for that kind of comes from like the Nazis and real history. I pull a lot of inspiration from real history that I really like. And so it's like the idea for me was like how the Nazis believed that they were like the superior race. I thought that would be cool. So what if everybody actually one time lived in this core, and over time the Nightclimbs thought we're the best and they pushed the other two races out, and so the other two races had to figure out how to fend for themselves because the surface was not good. And so then I was like, I exploded with ideas in the sense that, okay, the surface is kind of like where like spaceships wreck and like this kind of like the junkyard of space. And I had this idea for this planet on the outside to be like the space junkyard. And so now over time, there's like spaceship wrecks and all this kind of metal. And so basically one of the races that got kicked out of the core, called the Wrens, eventually just learned to scavenge and kind of scrounge around. So I liked the idea of a wasteland. I liked the idea of scavengers who are kind of tough and kind of burly and brawny, and kind of a country, like southern kind of like where you're really tough and you know how to survive, but you don't sound as eloquent as the rich, advanced Nightclimbs in the core. And then I was like, what about the third race? And so I had the idea for these crystals, the crystals that became the core feature of the game. I was like, what if they actually grow from the core that they use to like live in the core? The excess like energy or radiation caused these crystals to grow, and they were as tall as mountains, and so they're called the Crystal Mountains. And so the third race, the Lemires, learned to climb up and live really close to the top of the surface where the atmosphere is thinner. So they learned how to climb, they learned how to like live in caverns and caves. And so then, this is gonna sound stupid, but the inspiration behind their race and how their culture works was honestly the idea of jaguars or leopards, where they live like, they'll encounter each other long enough in the wild, like jaguars and leopards especially, to like, they'll encounter each other to breed, but then the males will leave, the females will raise the young, and then they'll kick the young out and go and keep living their lives. So the isolated way of living, I thought that was really unique and cool. So it's like, if they are focused on survival, they wouldn't really focus on leisure, they wouldn't focus on family or relationships, like the Wren would, because you band together and you kind of scrap to survive. Whereas in the Lemires with the crystals, you're very isolated, so there's a like fighting for resources, so you're better to survive alone. And they encounter each other enough to continue their race and keep it alive, but that's about it. And so that's where the inspiration behind the three races came from. And so then I built the characters, and this was not like I did all this as a teenager. This is, I wrote the book when I was a teenager and came up with the idea for the game. And then we came up with the idea, my husband came up with the basic ideas for the world, that I then used with my editor to expand upon and really embrace what these races were, and the sci-fi and like the official world building, which was in the editing process. But back in the day, before I even started writing, when we came up with the rules and the structure for the game, then it was like, okay, we need to just spend some time coming up with challenge ideas. And so I came up with like, I think my husband came up with maybe one or two, but for the most part it was like random challenge idea, this is how the challenge works. And so after that, when you have the challenges, when I had the challenges, it's like, okay, now I'll just input them like in what part of the story, how does this challenge serve certain characters? So for the characters, inspiration, when I was younger and first wrote the book, my hand is getting tired. I came up with like 1 or 2 basic traits that would be like the basic personality of the characters, and that's what I used to go off of when I first wrote the book. So the first version of this was like a skeleton of, I always described it as like a black and white sketch that doesn't have very detailed lighting or shading. And so when my editor got a hold of it, I sent her the information for the characters, and so she really helped me know like kind of what to do. And so my inspiration exploded, and I rewrote the book for the most part. I added 80,000 words to it. I took those traits and expanded upon them and came up with, okay, what, based on these basic traits, what would this person look like? Which also came about because like the races had different appearances that I came up with. So the Nightclimbs, the Lymiers, and the Wrens all look differently. So that kind of helped too. And their culture, how would this person sound like? And so I gave them physical trait, a physical quirk, because like everybody in real life has the word that you repeat out loud, like for me, or in these videos, as you guys have probably noticed. Usually people also have kind of physical tells or physical mannerisms that they repeat, so I came up with one thing for each person for that. And then based on all of that information, I came up with the backstories for each character. And so that's what I did with the 30 characters. Some are more detailed than others, and I focused more on the ones that had more POVs in the book. I did add 80,000 words, so entire character arcs and new plot lines and subplots were added. And in the editing process, there was one whole subplot with a particular character or set of characters that my editor wanted to take out of the book, so we removed that. So that's in the deleted scenes. So that's kind of the main inspiration behind different aspects of the book. And like I said, I wrote it when I was a kid, but I added 80,000 words. So part of this book was written last year and this year in the editing process. And when I added things and when we tweaked, because I tried to write when I was younger, and the challenges were a bit of a mess, so my editor and I really refined those, and that's when I kind of pulled more inspiration from the TV show Survivor at that point. Because as a teenager and as a kid, like I'm talking little kid, because I don't think I was even a teenager really, it's like preteen age, I used to watch Endurance all the time, because Survivor was like above my head, and Endurance was something more I could grasp and like latched onto because it was like kids closer to my own age and that sort of thing. As an adult, I started falling in love with Survivor, and so as an adult, adding more to this book, I refined those ideas and pulled inspiration from Survivor and latched onto that, and that's where this kind of came from, basically. On top of the fact that it does have to connect with the Valiant series, so that was also kind of pulled in there. And all of the Valiant books also parallel with the Bible, which is not obvious. Like, you really have to look for it, and that's kind of the fun part. It's like, okay, can you guess what Bible story it parallels with in certain books? So there were themes and things that were important to put in there, but I always write them to where if you're not a Christian, you can still enjoy them anyway. And they're not like sappy. I've done memes and stuff about this, but they're not sappy or pathetic or preachy or judgmental. Again, you can enjoy it if you're not a Christian, and they're very action-packed, they're very gritty. There's also some subplot romances in here. It's not a romantasy, but it does have romantic subplots. There are several different pairs, several different couples in this. There are friendships and platonic friendships and other dynamics at play here. So there was inspiration for those as well. I'm trying to remember what my inspiration. I know there's one couple in here that had the inspiration behind them was like, okay, we've got all this gritty stuff, we've got all this dangerous stuff, we've got all this death and like all this intense stuff, and I wanted one couple to be innocent, and it went along with one character in particular. I liked the naive was like the first word that popped in my head. Again, when I was younger, it was like this list of random words that can form a personality. Eventually did form, those traits and physical quirks and all the other things in the backstory. And so for that particular character, her word was like naive and innocent and kind of sheltered, and that helped kind of form the kind of relationship I wanted her to have. There's other ones that was like, more of like a strong female kind of character that's really brash, intelligent, and like some that don't have, and not just relationships, but the concept of like not all the partners would get along with each other because you didn't choose who you got partnered with. And so there's all kinds of different things. Grumpy Sunshine, enemies to lovers. Like, there was room for me to kind of play around with the dynamics, not just the romantic relationships, but the platonic relationships, the friendships, the team relationships and dynamics, whether they get along or not, and then the alliance relationships and how that came into play, and how everybody, one concept that really latched on to me after watching Survivor is like how much people would do for $1 million and what is valuable to that person. And so based on what was valuable to certain characters, I could kind of see what kind of decisions they would make and what they would do, because this isn't even for money. Like, if people are willing to lie and betray people for $1 million in the real life, like reality show Survivor, imagine if their lives were actually in danger. And that's the fun thing that I got to play around with. So that's the inspiration for Survivor. If you don't know, the Kickstarter is launching on August 5th, which if you're watching this on the 4th should be tomorrow. I will be having a special video tomorrow, so don't miss it. It's going to be fun. I've got some special exclusive stuff coming in that video, hopefully. But the Kickstarter is going to have a Kickstarter edition. It's a collector's edition, so it's going to have illustrations. I will pop it all up here. So we've got illustrations designed by the amazing Moy13 on Instagram. It has a detailed character guide, so all the characters will have a basic character guide in this basic version, but in the collector's edition it will be a detailed character guide with little tidbits that aren't in the book, and 12 of those will have sketches designed by my editor, H.A. Pruitt. She's also an artist. It will have the deleted scenes, including that special arc that was deleted out of the book that I love, so I really am excited to get to share that with you guys. It's going to have the short story companion called Directed at the end, and trust me, I'm notorious for cliffhangers, so you're going to want that. It's the first time I'm putting the short story companions at the actual end of the book. Usually they're at the end of the next book, kind of like the Marvel end scenes, and it's not a money grab, it's just kind of fun. And it's kind of like, these books are about the hero and the particular characters that are in there in the world, and there's really no room for like the big picture stuff until later on, so it kind of like gives you a little bit of the big picture stuff with the Chosen in more detail. So Directed, I'll pop it up here, it's going to be at the end, and a special exclusive signing and numbering page for the paperback and the hardback editions. The ebook will have a page, but it'll be changed up because I can't sign an ebook. And it's going to also, this is the most exciting part for me, it's going to have a team prediction sheet and a winner's prediction sheet that'll go through the book as it progresses, and you'll get to predict who you think's going to win different challenges and who you think's going to win overall. And then it has space for you to include who actually wins X challenge or the whole thing. And so you can get to kind of play the game as you read the book. And that's so exciting because I've never gotten to do that, obviously, because I wrote the book. So that's going to be fun. And that's all only going to be in the Kickstarter edition. And for my newsletters and people watching this video, I have special early bird tiers in the Kickstarter that are only available in those tiers, only available for the first 24 hours. So I will pop them up here on the screen. So there's one, and there's one. They're only available. This one is actually a secret tier that only the people who I give the link will be able to access this tier, and I'm giving it to you guys for watching this video and getting this far in the video. It'll be in the description below. So not only check out the Kickstarter and follow it, but when it's live, I will have a link to that tier below or something. I'll figure it out on Kickstarter, because that's only available for the first 24 hours, and after that, the rest of those little goodies are gone. Check it out. Your support means a lot. It'll be in the description below. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you liked this video talking about the inspiration behind Survivor, then check out the trailer. It's really epic. You don't want to miss it, so check it out. It'll be here.